All right, well, welcome everyone. Good afternoon. I know you guys can't respond, so I can't hear you, so I'm going to assume that everyone said good afternoon. Don, thank you again for having me. Yes, I am a friend of the National Urban League, and I'm very happy to be here. So today we're going to talk about where are you going, seeing careers from a different lens, and what does that really mean? So, you know, a lot of folks, especially here in New York City, are super aggressive. We're overachievers. We always want more, especially a lot of us being millennials. I'm a millennial. You know, we want to be our own boss, right? And the million-dollar question is, how do you get there? And I think, in my opinion, the answer is, you know, one, hard work, two, the network, and three, patience. It doesn't come overnight, but if you build a strong foundation, you can be super successful. So just jumping right into the PowerPoint, we have three main components for today's workshop. One, what does a career path look like? Careers and career paths are actually more like a jungle gym than a ladder, meaning there's lots of ups and downs, things ebb and flow, you know, things don't happen according to plan. You know, there's a lot of road bumps, roadblocks, and things that kind of come out of left field that you'll see, especially with a career. You know, when you're dealing with humans, human capital, you know, you're always subject to egos, personalities, moods, and a host of other things that you can all imagine. But it's never a straight line. It's always up and down, and sometimes more down than ups. But overall, if you do the right things day to day, and I'll give you some of the tips that should help you, you'll have career success. Two, career transitions. Within the same field or into a different field. A lot of my friends and some of my contacts, my clients, you know, tend to do a midlife or a quarter-life career switch, right? You may have gone to college to say, hey, I've gone to school and I want to be a doctor. I'm thinking about going to med school, or you do pre-law and you want to, you know, go to law school, but you don't get into the law school that you want to, and then you say, hey, listen, I've graduated, I have my undergraduate degree, I'm going to do something different. So we can talk about that and kind of the process. And then three, just finding opportunities and networking effectively. That's, I think, my strong suit, where I can really add the most value to those of you out there. And again, if you have questions, you know, feel free to send them to Dawn. Answer them as quickly as possible. So career path, as you see from the picture, I mean, a career path is truly relative. It's super subjective, right? I mean, everyone has a different path. Everyone has a different definition of career success. And, you know, each one of you on the call are probably different in different verticals and different careers. But, you know, a couple of things are the same, right? So I always say identify your passion. What do you like to do? And what are you naturally good at, right? I mean, once you've identified your passion, I swear going to work is no longer work. I mean, my job, my business, I don't feel like it's work. Every day I get up and I'm just adding value and I'm helping my clients. So from my perspective, I don't really see it as work. Once you've identified your passion, you do what you love, your career truly becomes second nature, and it doesn't really feel like a job anymore. Surround yourself with positive people, like-minded professionals, you know, organizations like the National Urban League. I mean, these are organizations, advocacy groups that help connect with like-minded professionals. I think that's really the name of the game, especially when you think of work. You spend more time at your job with your colleagues, with your peers, with your boss than you do with your family. So it's something to truly remember. Make mistakes. It's a big thing in my household where I say, listen, make a decision. If you're wrong, stick to it, right? And kind of defend why you're wrong, right? Like, how did you get to that answer? Make mistakes, but own it, right? There's nothing worse than someone being indecisive, right? Not being able to make a decision. It's super frustrating in the corporate world. You know, folks want you to make a decision. Even if you're wrong, at least if you can say how you got to that answer, right? How you arrived to that answer. Growing up in school, especially in math, they'd say, you know, show your work, right? If you're doing long division, show how you got to that answer. It was never right just to say the final answer, to show how you got there. I remember one of my math teachers in 5th grade, she would actually give you points if you showed how you got to your answer, even if it was wrong, but you showed the work, as opposed to not showing the work at all and having the wrong answer and not getting any credit at all. And then the other piece is, you know, seek out mentors. Seek out mentors and also find mentees. You can learn from mentees just as much as you learn from your mentors. Internships, externships will go into that. Ask questions. And then the last thing that I love is network, network, network. I mean, this right now, the fact that you're on this webinar is part of your professional development, and in my opinion, can help you get to the next level. So with regard to, I said, find your passion, right? So I love Malcolm Gladwell. I'm not sure if you guys know who that is, but he's a famous author. Wrote a number of great books. One book that I love is The Tipping Point. And he speaks about your talent multiplied by your investment equals your strength, right? So your talent, what are you naturally good at? What is your natural way of thinking? Investment of time, honing your craft, honing your skills. Business development is kind of something that I feel that I'm good at. That's my natural way of thinking. And the way that I improve my skills, my investment is doing more speaking engagements like this, sharing my background, going into more conferences. Like that's how I invest my time becoming better. And then your strength is your ability to consistently provide near perfect performance. Listen, no one's perfect. I get that. But if you can do something naturally well, right, just do it well, it's natural, and then you invest time in getting better at that craft, it truly becomes your strength. And this is this is interesting, and I'll be taking questions soon with regard to career transitions. So a lot of folks that come to my office or ping me on email or LinkedIn say, listen, Nkrumah, I'm kind of sick of investment banking. I want to do X, or I'm sick of law. I get a lot of lawyers who are kind of like, listen, this is not what I signed up for. This is not the job that I thought it was going to be. And it's really about taking that leap. So the picture there, you have a bunch of fish in the fishbowl that kind of doing the same thing, swimming round and round, doing the same job, showing up every day, right? They have that one person that takes the leap. Folks who, decide to go out on their own, like myself, become an entrepreneur, you have to be willing to take that leap, right? But how do you take that leap and how do you become successful, right? So a career transition is not only about what you want, right? But how do people view you, right? What are your relationships like with professionals? I give the example of my friends who work at major corporations. Take example Procter & Gamble, right? Major consumer products organization, and they may have a couple of big clients out of the Midwest. And, great relationship with client contact. They're doing a ton of business through Procter & Gamble. But here's the thing. They're doing business. The individual on the other side of the line who's doing business with you is also doing business with the name Procter & Gamble, right? So don't forget that, and don't take it for granted that the person is simply doing business because it's you. Now, they may like you, right? But don't assume that if you go out and start your own business, whether it be a competitor to P&G or something else, that client is going to follow you. It's not guaranteed, right? And a lot of times there's a safety net in doing business with a larger corporation as opposed to a sole proprietor like myself or a small entrepreneur. So I think you have to be very careful when let's say you want to move to a new organization, you think your client's going to follow if you're in a sales capacity, or if you start your own business and think that you're going to land the same clients that you had at a big corporation like Procter & Gamble. I think you also need to assess where you are, right? So if you're going to make a career transition, do you have an applicable skill set that you can kind of transfer with your new organization or new role? Is it the right time? I mean, have you spent enough time at the organization where you've learned enough about the business and you think that you can do well at a new organization? Some people say, how long should I stay at a job? I mean, it really depends, right? I know folks who stay at a job for 1 year and been able to find a new role. Some people have been there for 4 or 5. It depends on who you are and kind of what types of skills that you picked up along the way. With regard to resumes, quickly, 1 page versus 2 pages versus 3. I mean, again, it all depends on your experience. I've seen awesome 1-page resumes for folks with 15 years of experience, and I've also seen awesome 3-page resumes for folks with the same experience. So, again, it really varies. Jody had asked me to speak about working with recruiters. I've done a lot of business in the recruiting field. I say working with recruiters it's very similar to a relationship manager, a financial advisor, right? It's someone who you're going to spend a lot of time with. So pick your recruiters wisely. Again, it's a relationship. So when you're interacting with recruiters, folks who are going to help you, you want to build that rapport. I mean, listen, we're humans, right? So it's not very simple. It's not a transaction where it's, all right, I just want a new job. I'm just going to call you on a new job. It's more of keeping in contact adding value? How do you help other recruiters? How do you introduce them to other candidates like yourself or different candidates in different verticals that can help? When you help people, they want to help you back. So one of the biggest things with CLG is how do we add value, right? So one of the things you got to think about is when working with external recruiters is how can you add value if you're not the right fit for a job at that point in time? And then remember, building relationships. LinkedIn is huge. We're going to go through that a little bit later. And back to the basics, network, network, network. Dawn, are you there? Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm there. And actually, I'm happy you took a break. I wanted to stop where you were with recruiters.
Yes.
For someone who maybe they've been in the same industry for a long time, you gave the example of someone who's in law or someone who is investment banking, and they want to make a complete 180 career change, career shift. If they're choosing to work with a recruiter or headhunter, sometimes it can be hard to get that recruiter to buy into your value if you've only demonstrated value in this one area, but you're trying to move into something like marketing or technology or anything like that. So how can you get the support of working with a headhunter or recruiter if they only see what you've done, not where you're trying to go?
Absolutely. Great question. Thank you. So, and please keep the questions flowing. So, perfect example, right? So that goes back to my initial point about adding value and building true relationships. At the end of the day, right, recruiters get compensated by our clients. Our clients are the corporations who pay us to find that that needle in a haystack, that they call them that purple squirrel, they call it. But the person who is kind of not out there, it's difficult for them to find. Otherwise, the recruiter at the corporation or the hiring manager at the corporation would not have access to that person without a recruiter, without said recruiter. To answer your question, I mean, realistically, it comes down to building a brand and building a relationship with that recruiter so they can understand you, right? So not just doing everything over the phone or over email, actually sitting down with the person, right? Sitting down with the recruiter, going to the office. A lot of folks that I've spoken with say, well, do you have a job for me right now? I don't know if I have a job for you right now. Again, if you're a recruiter, you represent a ton of clients, and most recruiters are pretty well networked and well connected, even to other recruiters, even to some of their competitors that work on roles that they don't necessarily work on. So I think it goes back to the basics where you simply just have to build a rapport and have that conversation, and then keep in touch. I think where a lot of people fall short is with regard to follow-up. Individuals don't like to follow up and don't value follow-up. As a recruiter, I get paid to follow up, right? So if, let's say, a job comes out and your resume gets submitted and the hiring manager passes on your background, don't get mad at the recruiter. He didn't pass. I mean, he or she who submitted your resume, they didn't pass on you. The hiring manager did. So, again, I think it comes down to building a relationship, obviously telling your story, right? Because a resume is only, a page or two. That's not enough to show truly how you can add value. And then people need to also understand that metrics really help. So if you've, let's say, grown a division 10%, or you doubled revenue and you increased revenue from $1 million to $2 million, those are metrics. Those are hard numbers that people can actually digest. I think metrics also help.
That's great. And I see where you're going now, where to find opportunities. Before you jump into that slide, connected to that slide, but also from the previous slide, the example of the fish trying to jump from one bowl to the next. Sometimes those bowls are internal, especially if you're working at a much larger organization. So it's a similar question. How can you help drive your brand and drive your value in an internal environment where you maybe were working in one department for numerous years, and the company understands your value for this job, and they understand your value and impact for this role? How can you kind of create buy-in and find those, quote, internal headhunters, those internal recruiters, to get their attention, to show them that you're able to have a lot more flexibility and move horizontally, if not vertically, through the organization? How can you get that internal spotlight?
Absolutely. So that's where I think mentors and sponsors come into play. So a mentor typically is someone who knows the good, bad, and ugly about you, right? They know everything about Dawn from when she was doing great to when she was kind of at rock bottom, right? Your sponsor, and also note that the mentor does not necessarily need to work at the same organization. A lot of times your mentor would be outside of the organization you work for, but could also be internal, but does not have to be. Then you have a sponsor, right? The sponsor knows the best you. Your sponsor knows Dawn when she hit the ball out of the park, when Dawn is just crushing it, right? They know the best you, and they're the person that typically works the same organization as you, can vouch for you, and has the clout and the relationships to make decisions with regard to your career. So I think both are super important. I think with regard to finding a mentor that can help you with regard to when you are down or critiquing you and helping you get better, that's awesome. But I think even more important to that, or equally important to that, is a sponsor internally that you built a rapport with. So that could be, if you're an associate, an SVP or an SVP, or a managing director or director at a corporation that knows you. So I like to always say that you should be trying to partner with different groups within your company. For example, I'll use Wall Street. So if you're a fixed income guy or girl, you're a fixed income person, and you work on fixed income deals all day, right? But the equities floor is the floor below, right? And maybe you want to grab lunch, grab drinks, go to a golf outing, do something extracurricular with people from other groups so they get to know you. So when I talk about networking, it's not purely externally, it's also internally, because it's politics, right? There's a lot of red tape in a lot of these corporations. So my recommendation there is to try to find and seek out in an authentic way a mentor, a couple of mentors, and or sponsor internally. And remember, sponsors will find you if you do good work. So if your work is on point, people will come out and find you because, again, a sponsor wants to partner with other individuals that helps them to look good, right? And then they look good by promoting you. So I think it comes down to networking effectively, building strong relationships, and then also just being great at what you do.
That's great, and I love that tip about the sponsor. I'm trying to tweet it right now. Sponsors will find you if you do good work, especially because, like you said, that makes them look good. So thank you so much. You can keep going to your next slide. I'm going to continue to take questions from the audience through the chat window. Go ahead.
Awesome. So a couple of places to find opportunities. Indeed.com is awesome. Indeed.com is an aggregator for job postings anywhere on the World Wide Web. And Indeed.com is, in my opinion, incredible because what will happen is you can go to Indeed.com and say, I'm looking for an associate role at a major investment bank. You type in the investment bank, Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, Barclays, BNP, whatever you want, and then you can say the city. You can put Chicago, New York, LA. And then what will happen is anything that's out there on the internet that's a job posting on the corporation's website and or a third party's website will be populated. And you can do email alerts, kind of like a Google alert, where these email alerts will come in when jobs are posted that fit your criteria. In addition, you can also put your resume on Indeed.com. Google alerts I love. For example, if I'm interviewing with a big company, call it a law firm like Simpson Thacher or Davis Polk or any of the law firms, Fried Frank. I mean, in essence, what you can do is if you're interviewing there, you can set these Google alerts where you'll get information as it hits the net. You'll get information about these organizations. So let's say you're interviewing with Simpson Thacher, and Simpson Thacher just acquired a smaller law firm, right? And you're interviewing for an associate role. That's good information to know because it'll help you be more knowledgeable when you're interviewing, right? So think about Dewey & LeBoeuf, major law firm that went under, or you think about Lehman Brothers went under, Bear Stearns went under, acquired by Morgan Chase. All these organizations, right? Like these are major blue chip, or some of them were blue chip organizations, and if you know this information, it helps you navigate those waters, whether it be, okay, Dewey & LeBoeuf files Chapter 11, goes under, you're supposed to have an interview there the next day. What happened, right? Or your interview is delayed, or your job offer is rescinded, right? These things happen due to market trends and also things that happen in the market. So Google Alerts, in my opinion, is helpful to make you a more knowledgeable candidate. And also, if you're looking at an organization and Google Alerts, you have bad news come out, whether JP Morgan Chase is going through tons of litigation, or they didn't hit their earnings, whatever it is, it's just good to be in the know. LinkedIn, I'm a big LinkedIn guy. Everyone should have, in my opinion, every professional should have a LinkedIn profile. I don't care what you do, you should have a LinkedIn profile. You should have a presence on social media. Twitter, I use Twitter a lot for social media. We'll go into that a little later. Newsly is another one. Sorry, I forgot the bullet there, but Newsly is incredible. Newsly, actually, I'll show it to you. Oh, I'll mess this up. Make sure you guys can see this. So Newsly is great. Dawn, can you see that? Can everyone see that?
I can see that you're going out of your PowerPoint. And you're,
But can you see?
now I see Newsly. Yes, now I see it.
Okay,
Go ahead.
awesome. So Newsly is great because Newsly, I'm just going to scroll through this, minimize this. Okay. All right, great. So Newsly is great because it allows you to import all of your professional contacts to LinkedIn and or Facebook, and then just think of it, Facebook or LinkedIn, how it has a news feed. And any article that is posted about a contact that's in your network that you imported, the articles are actually here. So for example, Mark Tatum, he's a deputy commissioner of MBA. He's a contact of mine, right? So anything in the news that pops about Mark Tatum, I will see instantaneously. Sometimes articles come out or hit my newsfeed before the person actually finds out because there's a lag, right? Like let's say USA Today posts an article and they didn't notify you they were posting it, and you aren't on the website at that specific time, you won't know about it until there's a lag, a day later, two days later, a couple of hours later. You get all this now. So for example, if there's a positive article of Mark Tatum, I've sent him articles where I said, hey, Mark, congrats on X, or I saw you got the new job, boom, and I'll send it. And that's a way to keep in contact with individuals. I think with regard to finding opportunities, one of the great things is when you can reach out to your high-level contacts and not always be asking for something, but sharing information, sharing positive articles. Listen, people love positivity, right? And especially executives like when you kind of stroke their ego a little bit, right? So there's nothing wrong with sharing positive news and saying, hey, saw this great article about you, or saw a great article that you might be interested in. You said you play golf. Here's a golf outing my company is hosting. Love for you to be my guest. Here's a gala I'm going to. Again, you have to be clever when you're looking for new opportunities, or you want to make that career shift, or you just want to get promoted. These are some of the tactics that I use from a sales perspective and a networking perspective that have helped me with my career and my company. Another thing too is college alum. Most of us have gone to college. Your college alumni department is huge. Folks, I went to Lafayette College in Pennsylvania, and I love giving back. And I've actually, it's funny, on LinkedIn, I found a person from Pfizer, and she's a senior executive at Pfizer. I checked the college she went to Lafayette. I mentioned that, and she was super excited. She's like, listen, when can we jump on a call? This is an executive telling me, someone junior to her, that she'd love to make time to have coffee or a phone call with me simply because we went to the same school. So the college alum truly helps. Professional networks like this one, National Urban League, mentors we spoke about, and the alumni network as well. Dawn, I want to take a quick
Sure,
break
great.
if there's any more questions.
So one more thing about what you just said about giving back.
Yep.
What's funny is when you think about it, giving back, it seems so one direction, that it's just you giving one direction and you may or may not get anything back. But it really sounds like you are giving back in order to get back. You got back a contact, you got back a new resource. But in terms of identifying where your career path is going to go, how else can people tap into their alumni that maybe it might be someone that graduated from your school 10 years before you did. These may be virtual strangers, but you have that one connection of the alumni. How can you tap into that to give back to your school, but use those resources, use those tools to kind of help direct where you're trying to go in your career? Is it using them for informational interviews for anyone that's tried those, where you reach out to a stranger and do an informational interview just to learn more about them? Is it new business partners? How else can you leverage those volunteer opportunities to address your career goals?
Sure. So the typical sales answer, it depends, right? But realistically, I mean, everyone is different. So there's no true science. I like to say the art of networking. You have to try different things, right? So, would I say, watch how many times you contact one person? Yes, right? Watch how many times you email them? Yes. But here's the thing, like with Lafayette, for example, small school, 2,300 kids are in the entire school, all four levels, freshmen and seniors, only 2,300. But in New York City, we have a really strong presence, right? So, join your alumni chapter. I was the president of the New York City alumni chapter for a year, right? That was truly helpful where we hosted events and I actually put the event together and also had to, call each of the people who RSVP'd, right? And then, at an event in New York City, you don't know who's going to come, right? So those are opportunities where I could, find out who the people were. I have to call them at work or email them, what have you. That's a connection, right? Are you coming to the event? My name is Nkrumah Pierre. Yes, okay, great. I look forward to meeting you. If they didn't show up, then maybe reaching back out after. Notice you worked at Pfizer and you weren't at the event. I was actually looking to connect with you because I'm actually interviewing with Pfizer. Oh, you know what? You're a Lafayette guy. And, you're president of the New York City Council or New York City chapter. I would love to grab coffee with you. How can I help? Right? That's one. Two, giving back whether it means going back to campus and speaking to some seniors, helping them with resumes or, job interview tips. There are a lot of things that you can do, that we can all do, where it's not so overt that it's offensive or it turns people off. There's things that you can do where while you're networking, while you're volunteering, you can be having these conversations. Or, simply just adding someone on LinkedIn, see if they accept your invitation. Folks have accepted it, and then I send them another email saying, thank you for accepting my LinkedIn invitation, and that starts a dialogue, right? So like I said, there's a lot of different ways. You just have to be clever, and you have to also be understanding or respectful of people's time.
That's great. That's great. We're going to keep going right now.
Sure. So how do you utilize your network? How should you be reaching out? We spoke about that a little bit. How often? What's proper follow-up? So here's the thing. I mean, at the end of the day, like I said, it's not a science. It's definitely an art. You have to everyone is different. Some people are real big on email. I'm huge on email. I also like to text, right? But sometimes text is inappropriate. Email is too much. Some people like you to call. So I like to try different things with different contacts and see what works, right? And then also feel free to ask someone. So let's say you have a coffee meeting with that same person at Pfizer that I mentioned, right? And you have a great meeting, and then you make sure you send your thank you note. You must send a thank you note, right? Like that's for me, that's just expected. If you don't do that, it's almost like a faux pas, if you will. But once you've done that, you may not hear back, right? Most people don't respond to thank you notes. Some do, not everyone does. Send a handwritten note, right? And then, I like to set up like, what's the process? Like, how are we going to follow up? Meaning, so you meet with someone, and you have a great coffee meeting, right? And you say, hey, listen, everything was great, thank you. And your follow-up, as promised, I'll be reaching out to you in 2 weeks to let you know how the interview went. But just set those parameters in your follow-up note or even after your meeting so people can expect when they should hear from you next, right? I think that's super helpful. And then the other thing is make sure you do it, right? So if you say I'm going to follow up with you in 2 weeks, please make sure you do it because, again, you don't want to lose credibility. I think where a lot of salespeople and professionals kind of lose is that they're not true to their word, right? They'll say, oh, I'll be sure to send you that information, and they never send it, right? I'm Mr. Follow-up. No one can ever take that away from me. I follow up more than any person I know professionally, and that's God-honest truth. And the reason why that works, right, and the reason why folks call me the connector or the networker is because I'm true to my word, right? Like, I value follow-up. I value the thank you note. I put things in my calendar. If I say I'll reach out in a week, please believe I will reach out to a week. I might even add it to your calendar and reach out to you in a week. That's just my process. So I think you truly have to value the follow-up with regard to how often you reach out. Again, everyone is different, but people can't knock you when you're writing a thank you note, right? Like you can't be overly thankful, right? So in my opinion, make sure you follow up effectively. You put things in your calendar. You do what you say you're going to do, and then also, how do you add value? If someone's helping you, how do you help them as well? So next, kind of like my checklist for leveraging your network effectively. Have you been keeping in touch with your contacts, your clients, your prospects, your mentors? Here's the thing. Nobody likes it when you only reach out to someone or said individual when you need something. It's like that friend that calls you on your cell phone, and every time you see the number pop up on your phone, you're like, oh my God, I'm not picking this up because this person always has drama, right? Think of professional networking the same way. Like, you don't want to be the person that when you email, they know that when they see your name pop up, it's going to be, hey, can you do this? Or, hey, can you do that for me, right? Nobody likes that because we call those people opportunists. and or users or takers, right? You don't want to be that person. You want to be a connector. You want to be someone who thinks of mutually beneficial relationships, or someone who adds value. You think of people, you think of the best connectors, the best networkers, they're always adding value. Oh my gosh, you do X, I gotta connect you to my buddy who does that, who works at this firm, who works at that law firm. Like, those are the people that get ahead, in my opinion. The folks who are always like, hey, how can I get ahead? How can I add, how can I, use your contacts for, something that's good for me or my company or my wallet, right? Those people don't win, but I think the folks who make the connections, who are always adding value, the people who get ahead. And how do you keep in touch, right? Some people say, how do you manage all these contacts? I have 8,000 contacts on LinkedIn. And the way I manage it, quite frankly, are some of the tools I told you. Newsly is huge with regard to keeping in touch with what my friends and contacts are doing. Two, I simply send emails and say, hey, how are you? Or I just pick up the phone and call some of the business cards I've collected from networking events. And the other thing is I'm constantly meeting people, right? So I set up I drink a lot of coffee, right? I drink a lot of coffee. I always invite people to events. I go to a lot of events. If you follow me on social media, you'll see that very quickly. And then the other thing is thinking about people for the right reasons. For example, going to a gala tonight, right? So I had a client who actually did not approve one of my proposals, right? But I didn't let that door close and forget about it. I said, you know what? They didn't approve my proposal, but doesn't mean that it's dead, right? It doesn't mean that I can't come back and maybe edit the proposal. So you know what I did? I said, hey, I asked my client who invited me to the event tonight if they had extra seats to their tables. At these galas, most of these galas, corporations buy a table and people cancel last minute. A lot of them have extra seats. So I invited my prospective client to come with me as a guest after approving with my client, and they said yes. So that's a way I can add value, right? And again, when you do things like that, your clients will look at you differently, right? They're like, all right, well, he's not all about just getting my business. He's also going to say, hey, let me add value to him or her. Come to this event where you can also connect with peers and or help build your business.
That's great. Before we go into more questions, another one came in. This one is a little more external. So you have your network of people, and your network is clearly massive with 8,000, with a lot of different industries and fields and backgrounds. Keeping your ear to the ground, what are some new, what are the industries that are kind of gaining ground that you see more people making that career transition into? So for those on the call that are thinking about making a career transition either within their field or out of their field, what are the topics or fields that are kind of picking up ground that is getting people's attention that you've noticed either through your clients or through your own work?
Yes. So the market is hot. There's no question. This is one of the hottest hiring markets I've ever seen. I started in the recruiting market in 2009, and this was one of the toughest times. 2009 it was tough. And that was one of the worst hiring markets I saw, right after the credit crunch, credit crisis. Lehman went under, Bear Stearns went under, Dewey and LaBeouf went under. I mean, it's bad, right? Think of Wolf of Wall Street. Like, that's not the good Wolf of Wall Street, but when things got really bad, like, that's what the market was like. But to answer your question, Dawn, I mean, right now, compliance is hot. Regulatory compliance, I've never seen an industry hire so many people so rapidly and pay so well. So that's a hot market. Regulatory compliance, Dodd-Frank, AML, so anti-money laundering, which is basically that line of business came about because of the credit crisis. Dodd-Frank, which is basically part of AML, and different benchmarks that must be hit in compliance, regulatory compliance practices that must be executed or must be followed to for big banks and investment banks to be in business. Then I've seen also a lot of lawyers who have gone from working at a typical law firm to go in-house and work in compliance. So you see now a lot of lawyers who necessarily didn't get a job at a big law firm or were at a small law firm, kind of were unemployed or were not happy within those roles. Now we're going in-house much sooner than a typical in-house route, which is like 4 or 5 years, 6 years after working at a law firm, and they're going to work at Morgan Stanley and Bank of America and Goldman Sachs and BNP, and they're working in compliance and regulatory. Another piece, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about IT, right? IT is hot if you're an engineer, if you're a developer. if you are a systems engineer, desktop engineer, anything engineer in the IT space, you're getting paid a lot of money. And you also, this market is kind of like a employees market. A lot of times you hear an employer's market. It's an employees market within the IT and compliance space, where these folks are kind of dictating their salaries. A lot of individuals are actually creating their own LLCs or corporations, and they're consulting out at $200, $300, $500 an hour. Seeing a lot of that as well. So that's a long-winded answer, but I'd say compliance and IT are hot.
That was amazing. That was great. Thank you for that resource. I'm going to let you go to this next slide, and I'm going to take the rest of the questions that are coming in.
Sure, thank you. So solutions for success. So we're almost out of time here, so I'll just kind of get through this so we can answer more questions and make it more of a dialogue. But it's not, like I said, acknowledge your natural talent and purpose. What are you naturally good at? Hone your craft. So your strength times investment equals your passion, right? So kind of what are you good at naturally, right? And then hone your skills, and then that will truly be your strength with regard to finding a new job, making that jump into a new role or even a new organization. Focus on building your network and your brand. I can't tell you how important that is, where you want to every day, like I say, with a job, without a job, you want to still be building that network, because you never know when you might want to lean on them for something. And then I think of your network think of it as I call it a relationship bank account, right? When you go to the bank, let's say you go to the ATM on 42nd Street and you want to, grab some cash to go out, right? In order to make a withdrawal from a bank or from an ATM, you got to make deposits, right? And I think with relationships, that's the name of the game. Like, how many deposits have I made in my relationship bank account with X person, right? And, have I made enough deposits where, I can make a withdrawal, where I can ask for a favor? And if more people thought of networking that way, I think it would be better. You'd have less overdrafts. You'd have less accounts that are just zero or negative, right? If people always added value first, I think you would be in a better place. But again, not everyone does that, and the people who do it are successful. So that's my recommendation. And then also in building your connections and your network, surround yourself with good people. And again, when I say good people, it's relative, right? Not all people make tons of money, or people who have a good job or that you think are just successful relatively, but like genuine people, people who are authentic, people who like to give back, people who are not afraid to kind of, I like to say, I push the envelope, or I kind of buck the trends, but people who are not afraid to do that and take risks. And then remember, the best CEOs surround themselves with people who are smarter than them. And then lastly, additional ways to expand your network. We spoke about some of these great organizations like National Urban League, NABO, which is National Association of Black Accountants, MBVA, Metropolitan Black Bar Association, BNI, which is a networking group. I love to volunteer. I love going to networking events and hosting my own networking events. Got to go to panels, got to go to conferences. Networking events are great as well. And then lastly, with regard to your organization, going to events and going to industry mixers where you're going to meet more professionals like you, I think that's super helpful. It's, again, that's a way to expand your network.
That's great. And while we're on networking, before you go into this, I think this is your last slide, I believe. We have a few.
I got a couple more, but I can go through them quickly.
Okay. This would be relatively quickly.
Okay.
Someone asked, what do you consider the pillars that make up a successful elevator speech? That 30-second elevator pitch. For you, what are the components that make a successful elevator pitch while networking?
Yep. There's a couple, right? So, who are you? Right. That's one. Two, what do you do? Right. And then the last one is, how can you add value? I think those are three, in my opinion, those are the three fundamental and important pillars for an elevator pitch. So who are you? What do you do? And how can you add value, right? So it just kind of knocks, in my opinion, knocks out the questions that you're going to get, right? So in New York City, when you go to networking, man, oh, so what do you do, right? Oh, where are you from? Where'd you go to school? Like, you can basically cover both of those in who you are and what you do. And then the last thing is, how do I add value, right? So my elevator pitch, listen, is an elevator pitch, right? When you pitch something, you're talking about the value proposition, like how do you help, right? How do you add value? So I think the last thing and the most important piece, or well, not necessarily the most important, but a very important piece is how do you add value? Because again, I spoke about this from the beginning. Adding value is so important. If you can't add value, then what is the argument for keeping you around, or what is the argument for making an introduction? You know, I like to say, you know, like, what is the meat, right? Like, what is the meat behind you as a person, you as a professional?
That's great. A follow-up to that question that just came in, and then I have another question, and then we are going to end. We have 8 minutes left, so we're okay. But you suggested the 3 parts is who you are, what you do, and where you add value. Someone asked,
right.
On that second part, what you do, is it better to say what you want to do, what you're trying to do, where you're going? Is that a better component, especially if you're at this moment where you're trying to make a career change?
Well, here's the thing, right? So it's an elevator pitch. So again, every scenario is different. I like to talk about what I've done to help me get that job or help me be considered for what I'd like to do. I think, again, the elevator pitch from the 3 things I said are when you're talking, right? You're also going to do a lot of listening, right? So once you do your elevator pitch, let's say you're not in an elevator and you literally don't have 30 seconds, let's say you have a little bit more. You say those 3 components, who you are, what you're doing, how you can add value, right? The person who you're speaking with will then kind of digest that, right, and then come back with maybe follow-up questions, right? So at that point, you can then talk about, well, these are the things I've done in accounting, and I'm looking at this firm, and I'm looking to now jump to X, right? But you can't throw out all that stuff and say, oh, I'm also trying to make a job change, because then that's too much information. So I would say, yes, you can bring it up when the person has responded and you're having dialogue, but I wouldn't throw it all out there too soon, because then some people are turned off because they're like, wow, this person has no idea who I am, what I do, or if I can even help.
That's great. And for my last question before you finish your slides, someone asked, to that point, sometimes people aren't necessarily willing to share information, and it could be because you're asking and they don't know if they should share information with you, because they don't know exactly who you are. So when you encounter a situation and you're trying to either convince someone, well, maybe not convince someone to be your mentor, but you're trying to work with someone so that they may mentor you, whether formally or informally, how can you kind of navigate that new relationship? You're trying to develop a relationship, and they maybe are unwilling to share information or not sure they want to commit to a quote-unquote formal mentorship. How can you navigate a new relationship?
Yep, I feel like I repeat myself, but it's really, really important. I think what you don't want to do is push the envelope, right? Because once you push the envelope, meaning like you're pushing your agenda too much, people are turned off. In New York City, everyone's always like, what's their ulterior motive? What are they about? What do they need? What do they want? What, right? A lot of people think, what's in it for me? What's in it for me? That's most people, right? So if I feel like from jump, that's all you're about, I'm already turned off. Even if I have the answers or have the contact, I'm not sharing them, right? I think that's where it comes. It's really important for you to add value. For example, if you want that person to be your mentor, right, show them what value you can add. For example, inviting them out to an event, invite them to a volunteer activity. If you, while the networking, get to know they like to ski, they like to play golf, invite them out. Do things that are clever and kind of outside of the typical, hey, I want this, I want that. Can you give my resume to your hiring manager, blah, blah, blah. It's more like, hey, let me get to know you first. And listen, people do business with people that they like. People do business with people that they respect and that they can trust, right? If I first meet you in the first 30 seconds or a minute and you're already asking me for X, Y, and Z, back to what I was saying, it's a relationship bank account. I have made no deposits. I'm going to get no money out of that bank account, right? So I think we have to be very careful with regard to networking and getting what we want. Listen, if I want to sell someone, they will buy when they're ready. I can't make them pay me. So think about it as a sales tactic. So think about it from a networking perspective. You got to take your time. It takes time.
That's great. No new questions came in, so I'm going to let you wrap up.
Cool. So a couple key points to remember: identify your natural talents, invest time to make your talent into a strength. Like I said, network, partner with those who can help complement your skills and strengths. Maintain your network, keep in touch. Newsly, N-E-W-S-L-E. Newsly is awesome. LinkedIn is awesome. Twitter is great, but again, with social media, they're great assets, but can also be huge liabilities, so be careful if you post. Seek and provide mentorship. Like I said, you can learn from mentors. You can also learn a lot from your mentees. Be bold, take risks. Join groups on campus, or obviously if you graduated, professional groups like the National Urban League. Become a connector. Connectors are those that, connect people to opportunities, connect people with others, and also just always want to add value. So I'll leave off with that. I want to say thank you, and don't forget, your network determines your network.
Thank you so much, Nkrumah. This was an excellent opportunity. We're already getting feedback that people found this so valuable. We want to definitely encourage everyone to let everyone know we will be sharing the slides. I know that question came in a little bit, so we will be sharing the slides for anyone that's looking for them. And we want to make sure that everyone joins us for part 4 as well. That's going to happen in 2 weeks. Nkrumah he was our part 3 of our spring series of components of your professional portfolio. So I hope everyone got some great resources and information. And even personally, Nkrumah, I didn't know about Newsly, and I'm so going to start using that. I think that's a great tool, especially for those of us that are always trying to find ways to keep in touch and finesse those relationships we already have. And that's a great tool to kind of check in and tap in with people. So thank you so much for everyone who joined us today. Please join us in 2 weeks on June 3rd for part 4, where now we started with who you are, who you know, where you're going, and now resources to get you there, because we all know your career is your lifestyle, and we can see Nkrumah getting ready for his gala with his nice bow tie and tux, but those things cost money. So how do you pay for those galas? How do you pay for those suits? How do you pay for the dry cleaning and the conferences and the resume writers and the career coaches and all of that? Where's the value? How do you prioritize money in terms of reaching your career goals? So we're going to talk about that in 2 weeks. We hope to join you all. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to the Jobs Network at jobsnetwork@NUL or on any of our social media channels. Thank you so much, Nkrumah. Have a great day.
Thank you. Awesome. Take care. Thanks.
All right. Bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.